This anime is built like Game of Thrones, but it refuses to play by its rules. It has everything for it. A palace full of factions, power struggles, people climbing hierarchies, the kind of setting where social maneuvering and risk should decide who wins. And yet that's not what happens. Instead, the person who keeps rising is someone who would happily lock herself in a room full of medicinal herbs and never come out. The end. And that, on paper, shouldn't work. But somehow it does. And the reason why turns out to be far more interesting than it looks. Let's look at the setup for a second. The Apothecary Diaries takes place in the Other Palace, a palace packed with factions, influence, and people constantly trying to climb the hierarchy. On paper, this should be a very outward-facing story, one focused on politics, making alliances, enemies, figuring out who's liked, who's feared, and who's useful to the right people. Basically Game of Thrones, just without the dragons, the zombies, and yeah, a lot of degeneracy. Man, that show was worse than anime in degeneracy. But then, we have this girl, Mao. Someone who would rather be locked inside a pit with poisonous snakes than make small talks. Someone who occasionally turns into a feral cat when left alone with herbs and chemicals. But still, she keeps getting noticed. She keeps getting pulled into important problems, not because she's some secret mastermind behind the scenes, but simply put it, because she's reliably competent. Which is why probably the series is called the Apothecary Diaries instead of I got kidnapped, got a boob job, and became the Empress. It's an irony, really, for a story set in a very old, very hierarchical world. It feels strangely modern. Not because it preaches modern values, but because it understands something timeless. Competence travels, even in systems designed to reward something else. And the author commits to this idea so hard that the story gives people like this an actual name: the Law Clan. Let me give you a concrete example of how much of a sore thumb the Law Clan feels in the story. So in the novel Volume 9, Mao, along with several palace physicians, is included on a convoy to the western capital. The convoy itself is a pretty exclusive one with Junshi and all. But the problem is, this is the Apothecary Diaries. The setting is ancient, the hierarchy displayed should be rigid, and Mao, despite being more than competent enough by this point, really shouldn't be included. Not because she lacks skill, but because she's a woman. It's a gender issue. The other physicians in the meeting to decide who's gonna go are all men. All of them are skilled, well, except one, and some of them are privileged. So during the meeting, the objections aren't subtle at all. But then, the leader, Dr. Liu, shuts the entire room with two facts. One, Mao is capable enough as a physician and simply better than they are in medicine. And two, Grand Commandant Lakan will be joining the expedition. You can practically hear everyone screaming internally, but at the very least, they know that if Lakan is going, at least they have his kryptonite with them. That's how notorious Lakan actually is. But it's not just Lakan, it's the entire La clan. One of Mamo's friends, Anin, puts it bluntly at one point. Say what you want about the La clan's personalities, they do have a tendency towards genius. Most people focus on the personality part first, but the lore makes something very clear. They are so fallible that the people around them are forced to suck it up. Lakan is so troublesome that even the Emperor would rather not make him an enemy. But yet, he's prized enough that the palace just doesn't question him when he's sleeping in gardens, skipping work, or casually spying on Mao instead of doing his job. And the same pattern shows up with Luomen. Once the palace realizes how valuable it is to have an actually competent doctor in the inner court rather than, well, Gwen, the Emperor simply refuses to let him go. Isn't that great? Having a manager that actually rewards competence for once. This is not a rant, by the way. Nope, not at all. But that actually raises a more interesting question. What makes the La clan a family of geniuses in the first place? Is it just simply about genetics? If we're talking about what happens inside the series, I don't think it is. At first, my instinct was to explain this through introversion. Mao, Lahan, and Luomen all excel in fields where solitude, focus, and repetition are obvious advantages, so the explanation feels fit. And to be fair, there are plenty of studies suggesting that introverted traits can be advantageous, especially in modern setting. But let's say it together, correlation is not causation. And the more I sat with that answer, the more irked I became, so I kept digging. And then the answer just hit me out of nowhere, about 3 minutes later. A discussion about extraversion is great and all. I mean, it's a really familiar concept in the first place, but the trait that actually fits the La clan best, especially Mau Mau, Lahan, Luomen, is something else entirely. So what does Mau Mau actually want in life? It sounds like a really philosophical question, but for her, the answer to that is almost embarrassingly practical. She wants to experiment with medicine. She wants to play with poisons. She wants to test the latest medical rumor and see what actually happens. This has been there from the very beginning of the story. In episode 1, when Mau Mau investigates the inner court's hottest rumor, it isn't ambition driving her, it's curiosity. Jinji's orders come later, but curiosity is what pulls her in first. And honestly, Mau Mau is curiosity. It's the most defining trait she has as a character, and it guides her throughout the story. You can see it in how she treats her work. In the novels, for example, Mau Mau nearly slips experimental ingredients into a patient's treatment when she was a medical assistant. She was stopped by Dr. Liu, thankfully, but the instinct is really revealing. She's so curious about poison substances that she experiments on herself without stopping to think about pain or risk. I don't know, sounds really important to me. And when someone treats their work like that, what's not to love? No wonder Mau Mau is so good at what she does. Instead of approaching it like it's a necessity for her career, for a promotion, she approaches it like it's a playground. Like a kid messing around in Minecraft just to see what's possible. And by the way, this trait isn't limited to Mau Mau. There's a pretty dark, funny anecdote around another member of the La clan. He's an eccentric architect who became so enamored with a new device that he built it, tested it, and died inside it. When people found him, he was basically mummified inside the device. It's absurd. It's irresponsible by today's work culture standards, but it explains a lot. If you really want a psychological label for this, you could call it openness experience, of course, but in this context, the name really doesn't do it justice. Because what actually matters is this. These people, they aren't driven by outcomes, by KPI, by room recognition. They're driven by curiosity. In a world obsessed with hierarchy, that mindset looks impossible. But apparently in the Apothecary Diaries, it turns out to be unstoppable. And honestly, this is the part that hit a little too close to home for me. Because this channel was built through curiosity. So when I first started this channel, as a millennial, I wasn't familiar with shorts content. But honestly, it's too big to ignore, so I looked into it. Then I kept running into this piece of advice that was everywhere in creator space. Just make 100 pieces of content first, bro. Look, I understand completely that the number 100 is arbitrary at best. It's not like YouTube would suddenly push my channel because I created 100 shorts content, but I also understand the benefits. Repetition brings familiarity, of course, and even if I only have like 200 views per shorts, I still have tons of data to start iterating. So I decided to treat it like an experiment. I told myself, hey, let's try to make 100 YouTube shorts in a month and just see what happens. It was such a stupid idea. That's more than 3 shorts a day. One wrong move and my channel would be flagged as spam. And I have a job, I have a life. I could have just spent 8 hours every day making YouTube shorts. But honestly, that was the most motivated I had ever been for years. Not because I was chasing the AdSense, like, who am I kidding? That wasn't even enough to cover my monthly coffee expense. I was locked in because I was playing around with it. I tested everything. My voice without my voice, with and without music, different pacing, jokes, structures. Of course, it wasn't a clean experiment, but it didn't need to be in the first place. And that's how I got my first real traction with Riran, through curiosity, and while having an absolute blast when doing it. I failed the challenge, by the way. I think I created 100 shorts around like 6 weeks or something. But that failure didn't matter at all, because the challenge was never the point in the first place. Curiosity was. And I'm so glad that the Apothecary Diaries put curiosity in a deserving place. Because what stories like the Apothecary Diaries quietly remind me is this: it's progress, competence. It doesn't always come from climbing harder, optimizing better, or being the edgiest person in the room. Sometimes it comes from treating your work less like a ladder and more like a playground. That mindset can look really inefficient. It can even look really irresponsible. Your coworkers might give you weird looks, but it's the exact reason someone magically moving forward without even trying to play the game.